Okay, in lesson 6, we're being introduced to sprites, and there's actually a lot that goes into it. Um, so we're learning how to use pre-made sprites. We're also learning how to upload an image that we download, and we're also learning how to just simply draw it on our own. So in Puzzle 9, Lesson 6, Puzzle 9, we're starting to use the sprites that are given. So they're explaining that they have some pre-made sprites in the animation tab. And then we're going to look at the sprites by clicking on animation here. And we see the 3 different sprites. We're going to go ahead and use the sprite by changing the command in the rectangle. So instead of, for instance, an alien, we might want to choose a different sprite. So let's take a look at that. Let's say that we want to use the bunny. The bunny is called bunny. So here we have the variable cool sprite. That's not telling it to draw anything. That's just kind of assigning the variable, and we're calling it cool sprite. They're going to create the cool sprite at 300, 300, which is, show the grid, which is right here. And it's going to be the center of the sprite. And then, of course, what's the next thing? And then right here, they set the sprite animation to the alien. But what we can do, if we don't want the alien, we could go ahead and assign it, like we mentioned, bunny. And again, make sure we have the spelling and the capitalization. In this case, they didn't capitalize anything, so I'm not going to either. We're going to call it bunny and draw the sprite, and the sprite is at 300, 300. Okay, the center of the sprite. So that's how we kind of use the pre-made sprites. You guys could try the different things. For instance, if we want flybot, we're going to go ahead and call it, let's look at the capitalization. The B is capitalized, the F is not. We're going to call this flybot. Okay, and so that's how we kind of draw the sprite. And notice that we draw it at the very end. We want to draw it after we've defined all the different variables and the properties. Okay, after that, we're learning how to add images. So there's a lot of code, so it's going to seem really confusing. But what they want us to do is, essentially, they want us to create the sprite in this gray box here. And that's actually what they've started coding for us. They've defined the variable kite, and it's going to be here, this gray box. Okay, they have the background, which is the blue background. They have the grass. They have the string. Okay, and they told at the very end to draw the sprite. Now the reason this is grayed out like this is because they plan to have the sprite here in this gray box, but they haven't told the program what sprite to use. So that's what they're asking us to do. So we're gonna make a flying kite. You could search the web for an image or create a new animation from scratch by drawing your own kite. In this case, let's go ahead and practice downloading the image. I simply just Googled it. They're going to remind us of Creative Commons, but just go ahead and Google it, and let's just go ahead and use this kite. It's just literally the first one I found when I went to kite or search kite. I'm going to save it, so make sure you save image as, and we'll just call it kite. Okay, notice how it downloads there. To show that it's downloaded. And we're going to go ahead and switch back to our code. We're going to click on animation, and we're going to click new animation and upload right here. Now it's going to be in your downloads folder on a PC. You'll just click on downloads. Same with an Apple. With Chromebook, there is going to be a downloads folder, and it should download there as well. So you'll just go and go to the downloads folder, double click on the file you want, and now it's called kite.jpg. It tells us to rename it, so I'm gonna go ahead and rename it. I don't want to add that JPEG part just because it's gonna it's just gonna be more typing, so I'm simply going to call this red kite. And when I do multiple words in a variable, you know we can't use spaces, so what I like to do is I like to capitalize the different letters, okay? And that's just my preference. That's what I was taught when I was learning this, so I kind of just built that habit. Okay, we have that sprite now. Okay, so we've selected it, we've renamed it. So back in code mode, we're gonna now use the sprite.setAnimation to make our kite sprite show your new animation. And if you like to learn by text because you want to learn the way we type it out, it's the same thing essentially, except you're kind of typing in the values. So for instance, instead of dragging this code over, what we could do is we could just go ahead and type it. I'm just going to call this sprite, we just call it sprite 1 or sprite. I'm going to call it sprite 1, set animation, and then the label is going to be the name of the animation we use. In this case, red kite. I'll just click on it, and we need to make sure we have the semicolon. And if we are using the blocks, again, that looks like this. We just drag this here. Oops. Drag this block right over here. We just named it. We just called it sprite 1 because we only have sprite. We could really just leave it as sprite also. But I'm just going to put sprite 1, set animation. We just set it to this red kite, okay? Because that's the image we had. And now when we run it, oops, I have an error, kite. And as you guys see, I made a mistake. Oh, I'm sorry. Because we label it, not sprite 1, I'm sorry. Because we labeled it a kite, we need to go ahead and label this kite right here. Okay, so I'm going to reset and run. And you're going to notice the picture is messed up because the picture is really large. And that's what it says here. Don't worry, because we're going to be fixing that next. And we're going to do that in the same video as well. So we're done with that. Moving on to 11. Again, they talked about, you know, we have the same exact code here, but we're going to go ahead and start resizing it now. That's kind of the next step. So if we run it again, it's really big. So what we're going to do is now we're going to use this new block called Sprite Scale. And this is what you guys were learning in math classes when you guys were scaling pictures or shapes larger or smaller. We know if it's the original size, it's 1. We know if it's, to make it smaller, we use a value less than 1. Here we're using 5/10 or 1/2. And to make it bigger, we use a value greater than 1. In this case, we're using 2. So we want it a lot smaller. So let's actually test this out. I'm going to go to the Sprites tab, or we could go ahead and type it. We're going to drag in the Sprite Scale right here. And then we're going to call it kite because we're changing the kite. And then we're going to set the scale. And because we want it smaller and a lot smaller, let's try a different values. I'm going to start really small at 0 and 3/10. Oops, 0 and 3/10. And we'll run it. And we're going to notice it's still a little bit too big. Okay, I'm going to change this to 1/10, 0 and 1/10. And we're going to notice it fits. And you're going to notice my kite is completely, you know, it's not with the string or anything. Don't worry, you guys. We're just trying to understand how to add the picture at this time. So if yours is, you know, not the right size or anything, don't panic. This is fine. We're just going to go ahead and finish. And we are done with that.